Well, the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has dropped a new hint about the potential cost of living measures that might be there in the main budget. This is during a speech to small businesses in Sydney. We'll get more details on that a little later today. Our reporter Fiona Willan is there. But in the meantime, I'm joined by Independent MP Dai. Dai, thanks so much for your time. Your constituents and you will be looking for any cost of living relief in this budget. Now, let's put two and two together here. Anthony Albanese talking about more cost of living relief when it comes to electricity bills, and he's speaking at a small business conference. So does that give you some hope?
Well, Laura, I shouldn't be so cynical, but I can't help being cynical. There must be something happening in 12 months' time, an election time perhaps. But to me, this is another headline-grabbing announcement as usual, and it's up to, my understanding is about $650 for up to a million businesses for energy. I can tell you, and I think I've spoken on your program before, I've got local businesses here who energy bills have gone from $4,000 to about $11,000. Now, will that $650 help? I don't know, but anything will help a small bit. But I think at the end of the day, wholesale energy prices have gone down, and yet now these are all private electricity energy companies. Are they going to reduce dividends to their shareholders? So whatever promises the government make, I'll be watching this closely because, I've been talking about cost of living, energy prices, fuel excise tax cut. The government have to do something in order to bring down the cost of living pressures for families and small business. And it's surprising that they're now talking about small business and small business has not been a focus. As we know, the IR changes that they've made, that has a huge impact on small business out here.
Yeah, so what's the feedback been to those IR changes now that the dust has settled a bit? Small businesses saying to you that it's just, too onerous, or what are they? What is the feedback?
First of all, it's onerous. But secondly, those who are working in small business, like, for instance, in organisations that would benefit from the changes to the IR, where wages increase, it's great for those who are still remaining in the job, but they've been cutting staff back because, a small business will have to shoulder the cost of that increase in wage, for instance. And there are other costs. Energy prices have gone up. The cost of goods have gone up. The supply chain, all of that has gone up. So, look, I feel for families and small businesses, especially here in Fowler and Western Sydney, that are struggling because of the low income and the low socioeconomic, backgrounds. A lot of our communities out here are struggling to survive, and family members are working together to prop up their small business. So I just get frustrated when I hear politicians of the day making announcements just prior to an election of this big, great news, that people should be so grateful for. When the reality, that's not the case. People have to go to the grassroots level and understand the hardships that people are experiencing.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think about the nuclear debate? I mean, it all comes down to reliability and price in the electricity market. We know that, the reliability of black coal in particular, but also brown coal, will be very tenuous in years to come, particularly in New South Wales. Should the government just allow this nuclear debate to happen, but more broadly, pull up the nuclear ban and test the market with it for ongoing baseload power?
I think we should have a conversation around the different sources of energy that are available. Doesn't mean that you have to commit to anything. But from my perspective, you can't, at the moment, I'm very focused on the needs of small business in my community out here. For instance, gas. I don't think gas should be banned because there's a need for gas. There are biomethane gas, for instance. I went to see one of the biomethane gases here. Why don't we look at some of those alternatives, right? Because that will bring down, hopefully, energy prices for people, or make it cheaper for them, at least, if they have that different sources of energy and not just rely on just one at this stage, because we don't have the technology, the infrastructure to really deal. I mean, with solar panels, for instance, I mean, I hear that the Prime Minister is going to call for encourage an uptake of rooftop solar. Now, well, first of all, how is it going to encourage the uptake of solar? Who's going to pay for that? Now, with those who've got solar panels at the moment, they're generating so much, energy. But from July, now my understanding from July here in New South Wales, people who've got generating the energy will have to opt in to pay. So they're not going to be paid, but they have to pay because they're generating energy, because there's no infrastructure at the moment, no capacity to collect all of that energy. So people are getting solar panels, but they are generating so much energy, it's not going back,
it's not going back into the grid. Yeah, that's right. There's also this question about solar panels. I mean, we saw that $1 billion announcement just last week that Anthony Albanese made in the Hunter Valley. That's all well and good. There's two things there. The Albanese government subsidising these potentially $1 million companies that stand to make millions of dollars. Where's the return for the taxpayer? If it is experimental now, I understand the need for a government investment and subsidy, but where does that money go when that company then thrives? There's no return for the taxpayer there. They just absorb it into their profits. The second thing,
and we're not going to manufacture them here, Laura. We're not going to manufacture. We actually assembling. We're assembling an assembly plant here.
Yeah,
so that
and
money,
how could you possibly compete, Dai, when China is making almost all the solar panels that the world is consuming at the moment, and they are so cheap. They're almost cheaper on the market than they are to make.
Absolutely. So therefore, these kind of big announcements of into solar, it's all great. Solar panels is all great. We're going to manufacture it. It's all great. We're not manufacturing it at all. We're not building skills. We don't have the infrastructure to really manufacture here. And what's going to happen is we're going to have companies set up so that can import more panels here. And yet we don't deal with actually the circular economy, because where are the panels going to be recycled? Because in a few years' time, what's going to happen to those panels? So there's all of this.
It requires further examination, absolutely. Look, I'll ask two mayors about this a little later in the program as well. I just quickly wanted to get your view on the new Governor-General announced yesterday. Do you have a problem with it? Do you think it's a great appointment?
Look, you know what? I've read about it in the media and I've listened. I have had, met with Sam Mostyn in my previous life as a not-for-profit, founder of an organisation that drive the diversity and inclusive leadership conversations. I've met her, and she's a really lovely, person, and believes very much in terms of the whole diversity, inclusive, more of that in our mainstream institutions. Now, I believe that as a Governor-General, whatever she did in the past, she has to remain neutral, because she is the representative of the monarch. So she can't bring her ideology into her role. And her role is a head representative of the monarch. And my hope is that what she will do now into the future is to represent every Australian, not just a particular group or an ideology.